people. So that's the missional dimension of our ecology. Then sacramental, that we become the bread and the wine of the world. That where we are, people can find God. We are Bethel. We are the ladder where God is rising and is ascending and descending. That a deep ecology church is a hermeneutical church, that hermeneutical circles are gathered where people are taking seriously the work of interpreting what God says and what it means. They're looking at Scripture, they're looking at context, they're looking at who they are historically, they're looking quadrilaterally or pentrilaterally at the issues before them and are forming local theological conclusions as a community, doing theology together. Apostolic, they're intentional about going forth to organize and extend the church. Every church, a planter of churches. They're Pentecostal. I don't mean that in the denominational, historical stream sense, but that they are Pentecostal in a chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 4, book of Acts sort of way. That by their identity, they are multicultural. By their identity, they are outreach-oriented. By their identity, they are filled and pneumatic in nature. These Pentecostal markers that we see throughout the book of Acts. These people who are moving and living the amazing and spectacular adventure. And then emancipatory. These are not in any particular ranked order. Maybe doxological is the only one I would argue for as being primary or fundamental. But emancipatory. This is Isaiah chapter 61. It's Luke chapter 4, that the Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has equipped me to release those in prison, to cause the blind to see, the lame to walk. That where we are and where we go, we are setting free those who may find themselves in bonds. This is the deep ecology of the kind of context, church context, or organizational context like a seminary, that can form a person well. I ask a question in the beginning of chapter 4 that says, how is it that the vast majority of Christian believers remain largely unexposed to Christian learning, to historical critical studies of the great doctrines of 2,000 years of classical works on Christian life, to the basic disciplines of theology, biblical languages, and Christian ethics? Why do bankers, lawyers, farmers, physicians, homemakers, scientists, salespeople, managers of all sorts, people who carry out all kinds of complicated tasks in their work at home, remain at a literalist, elementary school level in their religious understanding? How is it that high school-age church members move easily and quickly into the complex world of computers, foreign languages, DNA, calculus, and cannot even make a beginning at historical critical interpretation of a single text of Scripture? How is it possible that one can attend or even teach Sunday school for decades and at the end of that time lack the interpretive skills of someone who's taken 3 or 4 weeks in an introductory course of Bible at a university or a seminary? This is a question Ed Farley asks in The Fragmentation of Knowledge, or The Fragility of Knowledge, a book around the predicament of seminaries. Well, this is so because of everything we've been talking about before. And yet when you hear it put that way, you being seminarians, you probably begin to see the possibilities. That there was a day that you were inculcated into this club of learning because you happened to be in rooms where someone took seriously these things. And you began to exercise yourself in the deep ecology of what was always there available. Is it possible that the answer to the question, what's an MDiv good for, is that people who are formed in such a way, who have that kind of habitus, might be best disposed to becoming mentors inside of local context to groups of 5 and 7 and 12 others at a time as apprentices to the same kind of experience, but only having the advantages of being able to work and participate in their character formation in mentoring sort of ways, and to legitimize their work of ministry locally as the body becomes mature. Is it possible that's what an MDiv is good for? I want to hold that out to you as a question and catch your answers online. Chapter 5. Then seminary went back to church. In chapter 5, I begin talking about disruptive technologies. In short, a disruptive technology is that kind of technology that often appeals to the bottom of the pyramid. Mainframe computers were once something that only large organizations like the military could afford. Then someone introduced microchips and eventually personal computers. Now people at the very rungs of society, lower rungs of society, could get access to something that only the military, the government, once could afford. That would be BOP strategies, bottom of pyramid strategies. Seminary is like a mainframe computer, very expensive, moves very slowly, and if something breaks down, you have to install a refrigerator-sized unit, plug it in, and slowly wind it all up again. However, church-based theological education is more like a laptop, something you can open up, something if a piece goes wrong, well, you're out $2,000. That's no small thing to shake a stick at, but it's not like being out of $85,000 or $285,000 for a refrigerator-sized server. Church-based theological education, where a mentor takes on an apprentice or a few apprentices, is a disruptive technology to seminaries, which require massive libraries, massive salary allotments, massive building allotments. What you'll find inside of that final chapter in the Chapter 5 discussion is on slide 62 is a portrayal of 3 different approaches to church depth that I've found in my research. The residential professor-led schooling models that we're all familiar with. On the other end, the congregation pastor-led models, which tend to have a sending bias and a church depth sort of bias, congregation-based. And in the middle is an in-between sort of thing, which I want to call extensional contractor-led models. This is online education. This is some field-based education. This is seminarial level, non-professional sort of models. These tend to have a scaling bias. They're scalable. They can happen small, they can happen large, but they tend to have a financial dimension to them because there's a contract with someone to pull it off. You'll see my slide. There is a relationship between the level of formality and socialization and residentiality and isolation. That's a cluster that tends to go together that is fraught with predicament and complication.